The fog hung heavy over the endless rows of corn, muffling the crunch of my boots on the frost-kissed earth as I trudged toward the north field at dawn, a faint, inexplicable chill seeping from the soil into my bones. The air tasted metallic, like rusted iron, and the stalks rustled secrets in the breeze, their golden husks brittle and sparse under a sky that refused to brighten. Each step sank deeper than it should, the ground clinging as if reluctant to let go, while distant crows circled silently, their shadows flickering like forgotten warnings across the hollow. My hands, calloused from years of coaxing life from this stubborn land, gripped the worn handle of my spade, but the weight in my chest felt heavier than any harvest I'd ever hauled. I jammed the spade into the earth, expecting the familiar give of soil packed from last night's dew, but something was off. The blade hit resistance, not rock or root, but something pulsing, as if alive. I leaned in, grunting as I pried up a clod of dirt, and that's when I saw them. Vines, thick and twisted, the color of fresh blood, snaking through the furrows like veins under skin. They weren't like any weed I'd ever pulled. These moved, slithering subtly as if breathing. "What the hell?" I muttered, dropping to my knees for a closer look. One vine quivered, then lashed out, wrapping round my wrists with surprising speed. Sharp thorns I hadn't noticed pierced my skin, sending a burning sensation shooting up my arm like acid in my veins. I yanked back, cursing, and ripped it free. But dark, sluggish blood welled up from the punctures. The vine recoiled into the ground, but not before a wave of exhaustion crashed over me, my vision blurring at the edges. I staggered to my feet, the spade slipping from my numb fingers. The fog thickened, closing in, and the crows overhead called harshly, their calls unnatural. By the time I reached the farmhouse, my legs felt like lead. I collapsed into a chair, breathing heavily as I examined the wounds. They weren't deep, but they throbbed with a persistent ache, and my whole body hummed with fatigue, as if I'd run a marathon rather than dug a single hole. I bandaged them, figuring it was some invasive species, perhaps carried on the wind from neighboring counties. But as the day wore on, that chill from the soil lingered in my bones, impossible to shake. That evening, the town hall buzzed with more than the usual grumbles about crop yields and fertilizer prices. Word had spread fast in Hollow's End, small town, big mouths. I pushed through the creaky doors, nodding to familiar faces. Old man Clancy with his perpetual scowl, Widow Jennings clutching her Bible like a shield, and a dozen other farmers nursing coffees and complaints. Mayor Wilkins banged his gavel, calling for order, but the room was already alive with murmurs. "All right, folks, let's hear it," he said, adjusting his glasses. "Andrew, you called this meeting. Start us off." I stood, feeling every eye on me, and described what I'd found. The vines, the attack, the unnatural tiredness that still clung to me like a bad hangover. Nods rippled through the crowd. Clancy piped up first. "Same damn thing in my south pasture. Tore up my fence posts overnight. Thought it was rabbits at first, but these ain't no ordinary weeds. They move. I swear it." Others chimed in. Jenny from the orchard reported her apples withering as vines choked the trees and sucked them dry. Young Tom, barely out of high school, claimed he'd seen them wrap around a strayed dog, draining it until it was nothing but fur and bones. Explanations flew wildly: fungal blight from the wet spring, chemical runoff from the factory upriver, even mutterings about government experiments. But a few voices, quieter and darker, spoke of something sinister, as if the land itself were turning against us. Wilkins tried to steer the discussion toward practical solutions, herbicides, county extension agents. But as I left, that metallic taste returned to my mouth, and I couldn't shake the feeling we were missing something big. Sleep evaded me that night. I tossed and turned in bed, the bandages on my arm itching like fire. When I finally drifted off, nightmares clawed their way in. I dreamed of vines burrowing into my skin, threading through my veins, draining me from the inside out. Faces of old friends twisted in agony, their bodies bloating and splitting open to spill more red tendrils. I woke in a cold sweat, heart pounding, the room spinning. It was barely dawn, but I couldn't stay in the house. I needed answers. That's how I ended up at Greer's place. Old Greer, the town's unofficial historian, lived in a ramshackle cabin on the outskirts, surrounded by stacks of yellowed books and forgotten relics. Folk called him crazy, but he'd been around longer than anyone, and if someone knew about strange happenings in Hollow's End, it was him. I knocked on his door, the fog still thick enough to swallow the world beyond his porch. He squinted as he opened it, pipe smoke curling from his lips. "Andrew, bit early for visits. Come in, boy, before the chill gets you." Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of aged paper. I told him about the vines, the meeting, the dreams. He listened, nodding slowly, then pulled a worn tome from a shelf, its cover cracked and faded. "Earth drinkers," he said, his voice low as if afraid of being overheard. "That's what the old-timers called 'em. Vampiric entities, born from the soil itself. Not plants, not quite animals either. Something older. They feed on life, drawing it out through the roots. There have been outbreaks before, back in the 1800s. Town records buried it deep, but I dug 'em up." We flipped through the pages, revealing sketches that turned my stomach. Twisted forms emerging from the earth, coiling around livestock, even humans, their eyes hollow and lifeless. They start small, aggressive like you saw, but they grow, spread, isolate places, turn the land barren. And the nightmares, that's them getting in your head, sipping on your thoughts. I left Greer's with more questions than answers, but a fire ignited within me. If this was real, we couldn't wait for the county to send some pencil pusher. That afternoon I rounded up a group: Clancy, tough as nails; Tom, eager and young; Jenny, sharp-eyed and practical, and a few others who'd seen the vines firsthand. We met at my barn, tools in hand, machetes, axes, even Clancy's old shotgun. "We're investigating," I said. "Find out how far they've spread. See if we can cut 'em back." We set out at dusk, the fog lifting just enough to reveal the fields in eerie twilight. Trouble found us quickly. In Jenny's orchard, the vines had multiplied grotesquely, pulsing with an inner glow like embers. No longer just red. Some bulged with throbbing sacs that leaked viscous fluid steaming on the ground. We hacked at them, but they fought back, lashing out with thorns that drew blood. Tom yelped as one wrapped his leg. I watched his face pale, eyes glazing over, as fatigue slammed into him like a truck. We pried it off, but not before a rabbit darted out and was ensnared. In horror, we saw the vine drain it, the animal shriveling before our eyes, its fur turning gray and brittle. "They're spreading fast," Clancy growled, wiping sweat from his brow. "Look over the hill. They're choking the road out of town." He was right. The vines had woven a barrier across the main highway, thick as a man's thigh, isolating hollows in like a tightening noose. Phones were down, signals jammed by who knows what. Paranoia set in quickly. Tom accused Jenny of hiding something. Clancy eyed me suspiciously, as if the vines in my field made me complicit. But we pushed on, alliances forming in the fear. Greer and I poring over his books back at his cabin, uncovering historical outbreaks. Turns out, every few generations, these earth drinkers rose up, tied to some ancient curse on the land. Last time, in 1892, half the town vanished, blamed on a plague. Survivors burned the fields, but it only drove them deeper underground. As days blurred together, the attacks turned personal. One night, vines breached my farmhouse walls, slithering through cracks like serpents. I awoke to them coiling around my bed, thorns prickling my neck. Fatigue struck hard, but I fought back, grabbing my axe and chopping wildly. Blood, mine and the ichor they bled, splattered the floor. I barely escaped, staggering to Greer's where we barricaded ourselves. The dreams worsened, visions of the town consumed, bodies bloating into seed pods for more vines. Then came the turning point. A thunderstorm rolled in, lightning cracking the sky like Judgment Day. Rain pelted the earth, but instead of washing away the vines, it fueled them. They erupted from the soil in writhing masses, revealing their true horror. In the flashes of light, we saw it, a central hive buried under the old mill on the town's edge. It pulsed like a heart, red veins radiating out to feed the network. The storm escalated everything. Vines lashed with renewed fury, draining not just life but inducing hallucinations, ghostly figures of lost loved ones begging us to join them in the soil. Word spread through what remained of the town. We gathered everyone able, farmers, shopkeepers, even the mayor, his bluster gone. "We assault the hive," I declared, my voice steady despite the exhaustion gnawing at me. "Cut the head off this beast." We armed ourselves with torches, gasoline, and even dynamite from Clancy's shed. Old mining stock, maybe illegal, but desperation overrode the rules. The approach was chaos. Vines whipped through the rain, hallucinatory voices filling our heads. My dead wife's voice calling me to surrender. Tom's father urging him to feed the earth. We battled through, axes swinging, fire licking at the tendrils. Jenny screamed as one dragged her down, but we pulled her free, her arm gashed and bleeding. Closer to the hive, the ground heaved, grotesque forms rising, vampiric entities, humanoid shapes of twisted rut and flesh, eyes glowing with hunger. They lunged, thorn fangs sinking into flesh, draining life in gulps. I pushed forward, dynamite clutched in my shaking hands. The hive loomed, a massive, bulbous mass throbbing beneath the mill's ruins, guarded by the worst of them. Lightning illuminated the scene, bodies of townsfolk already ensnared, their forms bloating, eyes vacant. One entity towered over me, its maw opening in a silent scream as vines exploded from its core. I dodged, heart racing, and planted the charge at the hive's base. With fuses lit, I ran, the group covering me with gunfire and flames blazing. As the dynamite's roar faded into the storm's fury, the hive's shriek twisted into a dying wail, its bulbous form splitting open in a geyser of dark ichor that scorched the earth. The network convulsed. Vines were coiling like severed limbs, their glow dimming as life ebbed from the monstrous web. We survivors staggered through the mud, torches flaring against the rain, burning the writhing remnants to ash, as lightning etched our shadows long and desperate. Greer, ever the sage, had pieced together an antidote from his ancient texts, a bitter brew of herbs and charred vine sap. We forced it down throats raw from screams, countering the draining poison that had claimed so many. My side throbbed from the thorn's bite, but the antidote chased away the fog in my veins, leaving me weary but alive. In the days that followed, I took charge, organizing our remnants. We methodically cleared the fields, adopting sustainable farming methods. No more harsh chemicals, just crop rotations and natural barriers like the good old days to prevent the soul from betraying us again. Bonds formed amid the ruins. Tom and Jenny paired up, their shared scars forging a fierce connection. Even Clancy softened, sharing stories by the fire as we processed our heavy grief. I mourned my losses, the wife I'd buried years ago, her voice echoed in the vine's mimicry, and friends who'd swollen into seed pods right before our eyes. Yet in that morning, I discovered a fragile strength, a reminder that survival requires more than mere endurance. The town began to heal, its scars knitting over like plowed furrows, though not without reminders. Sporadic sprouts pushed through the dirt, red-tipped and hungry, forcing eternal vigilance. Patrols at dusk, flames ready to purge the threat before it took deep root. At dawn, a year later, I trudged toward the north field, fog hanging over the endless rows of corn, muffling the crunch of my boots on the frost-kissed earth. That inexplicable chill seeped from the soil in my bones, the air still tasting metallic like rusted iron. But now the stalks rustled of renewal, their husks fuller under a sky that dared to brighten. Each step sank, the ground clinging as if testing my resolve, while distant crows circled silently, their shadows flickering like guardians rather than omens. My hands, calloused from years of coaxing life from this stubborn land, gripped a pouch of resilient seeds, hybrids bred to withstand the hidden predators below. I jammed my spade into the earth, no longer expecting resistance, but prepared for it, sowing with deliberate care. The weight in my chest had lightened, not gone, a testament to humanity's fragile balance with nature, the horror of what lurks unseen, and the unyielding power of our collective resilience. Hollow's End endured, its fields green and thriving. But I stood watch, ever vigilant against the resurgent roots that might one day stir from the depths. And yet, as I turned my gaze to the horizon, a single vine twitched unseen beneath the soil, murmuring my name in the voice of the dead.
Hey guys, it's Malice here. I really appreciate you sticking around until the end of the story. I'm a one-man operation and trying my best to grow, so if you like what you just heard, please leave me a like. Subscribe if you want to hear more, and please send me any reading requests you might have. I'm always struggling to find new content. Thanks again, and stay scared.